Welcome. We are so excited to have you back for the fourth episode of the Off Meta podcast. I'm Ganesh from Deck Check.
And I'm Samurai Dancer. Today we are tapping into the future with Alaundo the SEER. Welcome to Off Meta, where the brews that are hot shoot their shot.
On this show, we focus on the fascinating off-meta cEDH decks most people haven't seen yet, like the wonderful Alaundo the SEER. We'll have a fresh new episode every Friday by 6 p.m. Central Time.
Off Meta is not responsible for the tournament results of cards and decks shown on Off Meta. If you're interested in appearing on the show, reach out to us on our Discord.
Coming up on the Off Meta podcast.
You just keep generating value over and over by activating your commander and untapping it 2, 3, 4 times, and drawing 4 and playing 4 spells from your library, or playing 4 from your exile. Every rotation of the table.
First up, we have a quick section for off-meta news, where we bring you off-meta decks that have performed well in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, today we're looking at an old favorite of ours from last week, Fibblethip, except he lost his big buddy, so no longer needs glasses, just needs a monocle. Yeah, this is Fibblestacks. This is like what I'd like to call a morally wrong deck, because this deck has no true win con. What this deck is trying to do is it's using Fibblethip and Proteus Staff to rearrange his library exactly how they want it and draw a card. Then they're going to use cards like extra turn spells, and they're going to use bribery to steal their opponent's creatures. So this is what I like to call a morally wrong deck, because this is going to take forever to win. But in all honesty, the only reason it's going to take forever to win is because people don't know when to quit.
Yeah, this deck's learning a lot of stacks, right? Like there's Back to Basics, Arcane Lab, like just so much stacks.
Oh my gosh. It's running a Curse Totem.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this seems miserable to play against, but pretty funny.
Yep. If once they do the Proteus Staff thing for people, just give up. It's over. They do have the Isochron Dramatic Scepter loop with of course, Swan Song, so they can still technically win through combat, but I'm telling you guys, once they do that Proteus Staff, just scoop. It's over.
Yeah. Okay. So next up, I have a clue about what we're having next. It's it's very similar to Blue Farm. It is Clue Farm. So we have very similar to Blue Farm in that it is a partner pairing of 2 commanders in blue-red, white-black, just like Timna and Crom. But instead we have Lucas the Sharpshooter and Will the Wise. Lucas sacrificed artifacts to deal 1 damage to creature. Not that important. But Will is kind of like the main commander of the deck, because when he ETBs, each opponent can investigate. For each opponent who doesn't, they lose a life, and you investigate X times, where X is 1 plus the number of opponents who investigated. So basically, you're going to make 1 clue no matter what, and then you make another one for each person that chooses to make a clue when this ETBs. So it's kind of an infinite outlet. Aside from that, this deck is very, very similar to regular Blue Farm. The main difference being that it's a bit more focused, that seems like, on Dockside. So running stuff like Displacer Kitten as well as Baron Master Wizard, which just kind of goes infinite with Dockside in general. And the great thing about this card too, and why we don't run it in Blue Farm, is once we get those infinite treasures, we can infinitely bounce Will the Wise back to our hand and keep investigating, and it doesn't matter whether they choose to or not. We're going to make that 1 clue regardless, and if they choose not to, they're going to lose 1 life every time, and that's just going to kill them. Aside from that, it's a very standard Blue Farm list. One of the other inclusions they have is Springleaf and Cloudstone Curio, but yeah, aside from that, very, very similar.
Well, I've got something that we've seen before. We've got Captain Sisay Bro Stacks, as I like to call it. This is a Captain Sisay deck that uses green to create Bro Storm shenanigans with Selvala and, of course, Shia. And then it uses the white part of the deck for stacks pieces like Elish Norn and Living Plane and Urza's Ruinous Blast and Emrakul. Not quite white, but, you know, Emrakul, I'll be honest, feels like a white card. And then they've got the other Elish Norn. They got Solitude. They've got all the stacks pieces you could want. Of course, they're running Rule of Law effects, because why wouldn't they? And what they're going to do, they're going to be like, listen, first part of the game, I'm going to build up, and I'm going to put down stacks pieces. Second part of the game, what happened? I just lost in one turn. Because that's how this Bro Stacks deck works. It's like, bro, stacks? Please.
Yeah, there's also like a land destruction sub-theme going on here too. I see the Living Plane like you mentioned, and then he's running Kamal along with Elish Norn, which is basically like, just pick up your cards at that point if that starts happening.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're running Living Plane. Like, bro. Stacks. Ugh.
Speaking of unfair creatures, the next one is a bit of an unfair creature, and kind of is many unfair creatures in one creature. It is Gyruda, Doom of Depths. It's a legendary. It's a 6 mana, 6/6 in Dimir, Demon Kraken. It can be a companion, but in this deck we're using it as the commander. When it ETBs, each player mills 4 cards, and then you just put a creature card with an even CMC from among the milled cards onto the battlefield under your control. So this is basically clones.deck. Pretty much every decent enough clone is in this deck. There's some that are pretty awful, but we don't want those. Especially the ones that are even CMC. They're in this deck. And the reason why is because if we mill over any sort of clone, we have an ETB as a Gyruda, which then triggers Gyruda's enter the battlefield again. Now, it'll die the legend rule, but that's actually not always true because we have Sakashima and we have Spark Double, so we can actually end up with like multiple Gyrudas. Now, in the event that we hit a clone or two, we can actually just, it's good because even if we chain into multiple clones, it's still fine because they redraw us and they give us more chances to hit what we're actually after, which many times is a Hoarding Broodlord or a Tidespout Tyrant, which will let us just end the game. Aside from that, it's very classic Dimir list, nothing too crazy about here. We have a little bit of Reanimator stuff. We have, of course, Saw in Half, which goes crazy with Broodlord. But besides that, very, very standard Dimir list.
So they don't really play any other creature but their commander, right? Man, that guy Rude.
God. No.
Talking about someone playing only the creature as their commander, we've got an oldie but goodie back again on the watch list. We have Elsha the Infinite and Infinity and Beyond. Again, this is an old commander that was meta like a couple of years ago. It's rising back up because, let's be honest, in Jeskai, it's either Elsha or Narset, both of them. So this is basically what you're going to see, and I think that we're going to see this pop up more and more as it's just super consistent. It's always getting new tools as more and more non-creatures come out that are just going to take advantage of manipulating the top of the library. Mm-hmm. It's just going to get better and better. And I'll be honest, I'm excited to see it come back.
Oh, yeah. We've been seeing actually a decent amount of results with this. Like even in the last podcast, I think we had one. And yeah.
Still winning
cool.
with Top and Helm. Looks like it got it something new though, an experimental synthesizer. I think there's some loops with that in Underworld Breach now, which is pretty swag. It looks like they are upping their removal count though, as they are now on Gutshot.
Oh yeah, and there's some actually really interesting things in this list I haven't seen in a few other Ultra lists. I mean, it could be meta now, but I don't think so. Ancestral Knowledge is a 2/1 and a blue enchantment with cumulative upkeep 1. When it comes into play, look at the top 10 cards of your library, then exile any number of them and put the rest back on top in any order. And if the enchantment never dies, you shuffle your library.
What's interesting is they had a different enchantment that kind of did the same thing before. So it looks like they're swapping around. I think this is the same person. I could be wrong. And it looks like as they're playing the deck more and more and getting these consistent results, they're testing out more and more of these flex slots and seeing what they can do to make it a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, and this is a pretty efficient way of getting this effect. Yeah, it just seems pretty decent in general. There was one other card I wanted to just shout out really quick. Jeweled Amulet. I've always been a fan of this card. But it seems like it's most at home here, and being just kind of like a free, like you don't really have to draw the card to play it. You just kind of throw it out there with Elsha's ability.
I'll tell you right now, they're also on Dragon Rage channelers, so for them it's a surveil. So it feeds into their Underworld Breach. But I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to go too much into that card because I do own quite a few copies. And I'm heavily spec'd into it, so I wouldn't want people to question my integrity on how much I hype up this card. It's super good, though, and these decks that need like a little bit more colored mana, maybe you guys should buy a couple. I mean, maybe you running a deck that isn't green and needs a new mana rock. I mean, Lion's Eye Diamond's pretty expensive, and so is Mox Diamond. How about a Jeweled Amulet, folks? Now for $9.99. I mean, $2.29. My bad.
I've always been a fan of this card, man. I didn't even know you had a spec on him.
Just like the card.
Yeah, I really like this card.
It's never getting reprinted.
No? Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that it's like, it's good enough, but it's not.
Yeah.
Ooh,
all right. Well, I think that does it for our little news section here. Let's move right along to the main course. All right, we are here with MartianCenturion, the creator of the Alaundo, the SEER deck, which is a 4 mana, so 2 and a Simic 3/5 human shaman, and it has tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand and put a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. It gains when the last time counter is removed from this card. If it's exiled, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you cast a creature spell this way, it gains haste until end of turn. Then remove a time counter from each other card you own in exile. So why don't we start off with a little bit about yourself, how long you've been playing, your general location, like what state or country you're in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm MartianCenturion, as I go by on most of my handles. I've been playing since Oath of the Gatewatch, Battle for Zendikar type era. I think Oath of the Gatewatch was my first pre-release that I ever did when I got into Magic.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't get into Magic until my freshman year of college, when all my buddies on my dorm room floor were all playing Magic, and I didn't know anybody at the school I went to, so I was like, hey, this is a real easy way to make friends, so let's do it. But I got real into it, and I always wanted ways to make my deck better and better, and the whole snowball arms race commander strategy, and I eventually made my way to cEDH.
Nice.
It was good fun. I'm in the greater St. Louis area. I know the shoutouts aren't until last, but if you're ever in Game Night, is my local LGS. So we have a cEDH night every Wednesday that we get together and play at.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. So, why play this deck? So I see the title of the deck is Hermit Druid Still Wins Games. Mm-hmm. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about Alaundo, what makes him good, and why him?
Alaundo is really wordy way of giving a card suspend, because it's everything but suspend without actually getting suspend. And I have to explain that basically every single time I sit down at a table, because not only do they have to read the card, but it's such a long paragraph, it doesn't click until I finally activate them most of the time. So that's the best way I have to describe it, is suspend without giving suspend. But he's really good at snowballing, as many Simic decks do. So giving creatures haste off of the ability kind of negates a lot of the downsides of the mana dorks that people have been shying away from in the format, from Orcish Bowmasters and such. Mm-hmm. But when they all have haste and one of the things that this deck does really well is combo off at instant speed. You can actually not care about Bowmasters nearly as much as you might think in a creature-heavy Simic deck like this that plays a lot of dorks.
How does this deck combo in? Like I'm like looking at him like Hermit Druid. Like this, there's no Dread return. How are you utilizing the Hermit Druid? Obviously Thassa's, but how are you bringing back the Thassa's?
We call I like to refer to it sort of as a Memories Journey Doomsday pile. So you do the classic activate Hermit Druid, mill your whole library because you have no basics. Flashback Memories Journey for 1 green. You put in if you're trying to win at sorcery speed, but you can actually win with Hermit Druid at instant speed in this deck, depending on how many Alaundo activations you have. So the pile usually ends up being Thassa's Oracle, Endurance, just in case you want to reset and try and go for it again at some point, plus Born Upon a Wind. And depending on how many Alaundo activations you have, you can, do the normal thing where you tap Alaundo. If you know you're protected, you can just put in Thassa's Oracle, draw it with Alaundo, and then just cast it. Or you can get cheeky at instant speed with, if you have 2 ways to draw, where you can put all 3 of those cards in with Born Upon a Wind, Endurance, and Thassa's Oracle, and then draw both cards, cast the Born Upon a Wind, cast the Thassa's Oracle that way.
I see.
Okay, so you crack the pile with Born Upon the Wind and Alaundo. Okay, cracks. So what's the alternate win con?
You get a whole bunch in these colors. Another way to crack
has a whole bunch of win con.
A whole bunch of win cons. That's another thing about this deck that I love is all of the win conditions layer so beautifully in this deck. It's a very high synergy deck. As you can if just by looking through the list, you're going to see a whole lot of cards that you've just never seen outside of Draft Chaff, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll probably have to explain a lot of them. Chaff. Yeah, you probably don't. There's a lot of old cards that you normally don't get to play, and a lot of untappers that wouldn't see play anywhere outside of this. But because we have Thassa's Oracle, we also have Unctus, which is a kind of a fringe cEDH deck all on its own. But because we're already playing a lot of untappers in order to generate just generic value off of our commander activations, it also layers really beautifully with Apheto Alchemist and Unctus. Or because we also are in green, we have Seeker of Skybreak and Unctus, letting it untap itself to draw and discard through your whole library.
Seeker of Skybreak. What's its thing? What's its mana value?
It is 1 and a green for a 2/1 elf, which says tap to untap target creature. And then the second ability of Unctus.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, and you also have Unctus, which can turn target creature you control blue, and an artifact, letting Seeker of Skybreak tap and untap itself to trigger Unctus to draw and discard through your whole library.
I see. Okay.
Secret Unctus deck.
It is kind of a secret Unctus deck. This also works if you have just 2 generic untappers. So if you have Cura's Follower, which can't untap itself, but it can untap, a Kelpie Guide or Vizier of Tumbling Sands, because each of them say another, they're also blue creatures untapping each other. So you can draw and discard through your library that way.
I see. Okay.
It's very interesting.
So, yeah, when I initially saw this commander, I was thinking... usually how people would think to build it, I'm guessing, is cheating out big things, right? Because maybe untap them a little bit, but I was imagining more like Hullbreaker Horrors and Tightspout Tyrants, Jin Gataxias, a bit more like Kinnan, but that is not at all this deck.
No.
Yeah, so what is your game plan or general strategy? Just, what are you thinking when you go into a game?
Like I said, normally when a lot of people build this deck for casual, that is a lot of what they think about is like they think of it as suspend. But because it's not suspend, the time counters don't actually tick down on your upkeep. So you only tick down the time counters when you activate your commander. So if your commander goes away, those are just stuck in exile.
I didn't know that.
I found that having these big, high-costed creatures taking 7 activations to finally get into play and get your first piece of value out of it or whatever just was never a great way to actually try and win the game. And it also puts a lot of stress on the commander in the command zone, which is why we have Hermit Druid and Unctus in the deck, so we can win without needing the commander, using the commander as an enabler and not necessarily an outlet, which tends to be the problem with these tap abilities.
Yeah, because the Eldritch starts out at 4, which is, I mean, it's not a lot, but then once he hits 6, it starts to hurt, right? Okay.
Basically, you don't want to get capped by your commander being dead or locked out with a Drannith or a Gilded.
Yeah.
And then because this is Simic, but it's not Kennen, so it's not like you have like discounted like massive like mana generation in this. You have very fair mana generation with Untappers and Dorks. So
yeah,
like a Tide Sprout and a Hullbreaker is not getting a discount. You are paying full retail for that card, and it feels like you would see that on turn 5. Maybe you might be able to cast one of those into a counterspell.
Yeah, maybe. That's if you're lucky. That's another thing about the deck is because it's so similar to Suspend, we get to cast everything at instant speed and ignore these timing restrictions. You most spend a lot of your mid and late game just passing, drawing your card for turn, playing a land maybe, and just passing the turn, because you just keep generating value over and over by activating your commander and untapping it 2, 3, 4 times. And drawing 4 and playing 4 spells from your library, or playing 4 from your exile, every rotation of the table, and it kind of snowballs on itself that way.
All right. So here's my question. We always like to ask this: your early game. What's the goal on turn 1 and 2? Like when you mull, what are you looking for in your opening hand, and what are you hoping on turn 1 and 2 to do?
The primary game plan for step 1 is I don't think I usually keep a hand that doesn't have at least 3 to 4 sources of total mana. So whether that's 2 lands and a Dork, 2 lands and a Jeweled Lotus, something like that. So just 4 pieces of mana is basically the bare minimum for what you need for most starting hands. Of course, you can always get away with a turn 1 Mystic Remora or Mystic Study and just get a value engine in play. Because we're a Hermit Druid deck, we can also just, go for a really Hermit Druid, where the entire combo is, as long as your Hermit Druid is in play and not summoning sick, for green, green, blue, blue, you can go for your Hermit Druid Memory's Journey line on your turn. So you can present early wins with this deck, and that's one of the things. I've seen other lists try and build this deck a very different way, and I think it puts too much emphasis on the commander. That I think Hermit Druid and Unctus tend to be the breath that Alaundo tends to need, because if they're using a bunch of removal on your commander, you can just pivot into a Hermit Druid or an Unctus and still win the game without your commander. And that tends to be a misconception about the deck, is that it needs its commander in play to win the game.
I think I'm seeing what you're saying. Like, basically, your commander's there for consistency's sake, but it's not the all-star.
Yeah, it's not the all-star that people might think it is when you first sit down at a table. A lot of times because you're playing an off-meta deck, people think, oh, this. If you kill the commander one time, you're good to go. You don't really need to worry about it. But because we have these other ways to win the game that don't necessarily need it, we can fly under the radar in a lot of situations.
I see.
So yeah, a lot of the early game is mostly, playing your tapping creatures, playing your mana dorks, playing your regular card advantage engines with Mystic and Rhystic. Those kinds of very normal mid-rangey game plans.
I see you're benefiting mostly from the lack of like board wipes that people have gone down on.
Yeah, there are a lot fewer board wipes because of people are relying so heavy on Orcish Bowmasters nowadays that you can actually get away with a lot more than you used to be able to when every list was running Toxic Deluge or Dam or I don't know, name another cEDH board wipe. Fire Confluence, or is Fire Confluence is the name of it?
Fire
Fire
Covenant.
Covenant.
Fire Covenant, that's the one.
Yeah.
React.
Yeah, people are cutting those, and we're gonna take advantage of that.
Let's see.
So how does this work in the mid game? Are you trying to just jam wins there, or are you just kind of more sitting back? What's the goal, right, in the mid game?
We are finding our window in the mid game. We thrive in the mid game. After we hit, probably turn 3 or 4, we're easily outvaluing 90% of decks in this format.
Wow.
Like, easily. We use the One Ring better than any deck in this format, I promise. We are a Seedborn Muse. All of our untappers untap the One Ring, so we can do it just multiple times, all in the same turn. I've stormed off and activated the One Ring like 6 times just for value on somebody else's end step.
You won the next turn, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We abuse the One Ring better than just about any other deck in this format.
Guessing this is also Minamo. You're on Minamo here. Okay.
Minamo untaps our commander. It untaps the One Ring. It untaps Nykthos or Gaia's Cradle.
Oh God. Yes.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. We go hard on untapping things that can really do some very explosive things.
Yeah.
We thrive in the mid game for sure.
So, question: when it comes to the late game, like, what's the thing that normally makes you go, like, once it's assembled, you go, okay, now we're gonna try to jam wins?
We tend to win if you can activate Alaundo 3 times any given turn cycle. We can usually just end up finding a way to win the game because our win conditions are so dense. Because we have a lot more than just Unctus and Hermit Druid. We have Illusionist Bracers, we have Freed from the Real, we have Pemon's Aura, we have Intruder Alarm. All of these are also combo pieces that we can use to win the game, and that also layer really well on top of each other to storm off in a lot of circumstances. So if you wanted me to explain some of those, we definitely can, because they're not always the most obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about the some of the combos here. So I guess let's start off with as Freed from the Real. Yeah, what is how does this work in your deck?
Freed from the Real.
Oh God.
I should say one of the things that we can do with all of these combo pieces is not only do they go infinite and win us the game, we can also just use them for value on our commander. So the number of times where you just cast a Freed from the Real with your commander and pay 1 blue to activate your commander, 5 times on somebody's end step, like, we can usually just do that and win the game when we untap. So if you don't know, both Freed from the Real and Pemon's Aura both say blue mana, untap enchanted creature. And we have 2 primary ways of tapping for multiple blue mana to go actually infinite in this case. To generate an infinite amount of blue mana, and also, assuming we enchant a creature that untaps another permanent or a land, we can usually use Alaundo as an outlet, or the One Ring as an outlet, or something along those lines. Where if we have a Utopia Sprawl naming blue on any of our forests, or a Nykthos, if we have Pemon's Aura or Freed from the Real in play, we can generate an infinite amount of blue mana and have an infinite number of untaps.
I see. So, yeah, okay, this makes sense. So, like, if you have a Kyora's Follower or something, which untaps on a target permanent, you can use the blue mana you get from a Nykthos and just untap the Follower, and it doesn't matter that it itself doesn't tap for mana because it's untapping something else that does, right?
Yeah. We have a deceivingly high number of mana dorks in this deck because all of our untappers are also mana dorks.
Right.
Pseudo.
Yes. Well, no, I mean, yeah, I feel like they are like Fate Stitcher is gonna still untap your lands at the least.
Yeah.
The only reason I say pseudo is because they do target.
Yeah, that's true.
Then they are not mana abilities.
They're not mana abilities. There is a round of priority each time you do it. But that's one of the Pen and Zora and Freed from the World tend to be your most protected wins because if you have multiple blue mana, you cast a removal spell. My thing's already enchanted, or you want to counter whatever spell I'm using to pay off. All right, I'm going to pay another blue. I'm going to untap it again, and then I'm going to win again in response to your removal spell. So if Pen and Zora or Freed from the Real resolve attached to your creature, it's too late most of the time. The removal spell just isn't good enough anymore.
Even worse is if people aren't running board wipes, you know what they're really not running? Land wipes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people don't run anything to deal with lands really except Poseiju. And again, you just kind of went over the top of it. Mm-hmm. So you got Pimmons and Free from the Real that do this. I know that there's like loops with Illusionist Bracer and a Pheto Alchemist. Already know that. You want to explain the Illusionist Bracer with the Pheto Alchemist?
Yeah, sure. So with Illusionist Bracers, the most condensed combos are either with the Pheto Alchemist or Seeker of Skybreak, because with Illusionist Bracers equipped to either of those creatures, you activate the Seeker of Skybreak, triggering the Illusionist Bracers, so you get 2 copies of untapped target creature. The first one usually goes to either Alaundo or itself. You can sometimes get away with, depending on how well you want to protect your win, you can actually double up the untapping of itself. So they have to, your opponents have to respond to the top one. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But basically what happens is you have 2 copies of untapped target creature. The first one targets itself to untap itself, and the second one untaps your commander, letting you activate in response and go over and over again to untap Alaundo and draw through your deck and cast a Thassa's Oracle or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think what makes your commander so interesting is the fact that it not only is card filtering, but it's also casting.
Mm-hmm. It's card filtering, it's card selection, it basically it casts the cards. It's basically staples draw a card out of every spell that you cast through your commander.
So like if you were to if someone was to go up to you right now and be like, "Hey man, I love this deck. This deck looks really cool." No one's gonna say that. No, I'm kidding. They go up to you. They say, "This deck looks really cool. What do I need to know before I sleeve this up? What are some things that I'm gonna mess up on in the first iterations, like the first times that I play this? Like, what are some pitfalls, traps, and what do I need to know before I build this deck?"
This deck rewards creativity more than almost any other deck. Your untappers untap opponents' permanents.
Oh god.
So if somebody else has a counterspell and you don't, you can use your untappers to untap their lands so they can counter somebody else's win attempt. So you don't actually necessarily need them. It rewards creativity because we can activate an Agatha's Soul Cauldron multiple times. Soul Cauldron is a sneaky, not only intuition pile card, which we can also talk about at some point, but Soul Cauldron lets us get a lot of utility off of our untappers that have died, so we can turn our just generic mana dorks also into untappers. On top of just being a generically powerful card where we can, snipe a Dothy Voidwalker or, any other sacrifice ability creature onto our mana dorks, Ranger Captain of Eos, something like that. Like I said, we can activate the One Ring a whole bunch of times. We can activate a Forbidden Orchard, giving multiple spirits to our opponents to let people block Tymnas, because people don't kill that creature often enough. I've done that multiple times. I've killed somebody else with their own City of Brass before. That was a fun one. Basically, with Fate Stitcher, you can tap down a permanent, And when you hit net infinite untaps, you can actually tap down other people's City of Brass, and because City of Brass specifically says when it becomes tapped, it deals a damage, you can kill people that way. That was a fun one.
I also imagine you can do the same thing with other people's Forbidden Orchard.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Like I said, this deck rewards creativity way more than most any other deck you get to play. A lot of your other combos are so much more straightforward. It's a lot more difficult to figure out what's going on at face value with this deck. So it definitely rewards knowing what your cards actually say rather than what people think that they do, if that makes sense.
Now, what's some like bad interactions like that you're like, just so you know, this is like a nombo to do this. Do not do this part. Like, it's like, if, I don't know, like someone's like, oh, I'm going to tutor something to hand and crack LED to cast the tutor. Like, you can't do that. You can crack the tutor. Like, something like that.
This deck doesn't actually have very many of those kinds of situations. A very important ruling that I should probably point out. The last time counters, when the last time counter gets removed, is actually a trigger. So you can stack those triggers independently. So for example, if we have both Vizier of Tumbling Sands and a Freed from the Reel in exile off of our commander, if they're both theoretically about to come off of time counters at the same time, we can actually stack the triggers to where the Vizier of Tumbling Sand resolves before the Freed from the Reel even gets put onto the stack. So you can actually enchant the Vizier of Tumbling Sands with the Freed from the Reel. Whereas if they were put on the stack at the same time, your target from the Freed from the Reel would have to target a creature already in play. Which also protects you from Mindbreak Trap in a whole bunch of scenarios, because they don't actually get put onto the stack all at the same time. So that's very important.
That makes sense. You could if you wanted to, but you have so there's like a bunch of triggered abilities here. You could be like, if for some reason you wanted two things to come off the stack at the same time, you could wait for the first one to get cast and then Alaundo's ability in response. When you got hold priority on that. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, you can mess with priority and the triggers and the stacks in a very interesting way with this deck. That's probably the biggest one that happens and is very relevant pretty frequently in this deck. Another one is mostly just having to explain the fact that they're not actually suspended and they don't take down on your upkeep, because that's the first thing you have to explain to your opponents every time you play the deck.
Not suspended.
They're not suspended.
Similar. Very similar.
It does work properly with actual suspend cards, so it will remove time counters from suspended cards, but there's no suspend cards in this deck.
Well, you don't want to run suspend cards? Wonder why.
No. Most of them just are not good enough.
Right, yeah. So,
I mean, the only one I could see you liking is Hypergenesis, and that's banned.
Yeah, we actually don't care about delay. we has the same.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. We can delay.
That's an interaction that
Like
your opponents have probably misplayed into a couple of times.
I've done that for sure.
Click. Cards back.
Yep, I've had my Seedboard Muse delayed. Just like, all right, remove a time counter, remove a time counter, remove a time counter, cast it again.
So, are there any cards in here that like you've had a lot of success with that people might overlook, or like people might not like just looking at the list? I know we talked about Thoracle already, and this isn't a deck with black, but I think it actually does make a lot of sense. Since your commander is a semi-doomsday enabler, like Hermit Druid enabler. But what else? What else is in here that's kind of odd?
Like I said, we play a lot of odd, weird creatures, mostly the untappers. Those don't really see play anywhere outside of Unctus, I guess. A lot of them are just untap, target another target permanent. Deep Analysis is one that's sneakily good in a lot of your lines, because not only is it crack your Memory's Journey Doomsday pile, so whenever you activate Hermit Druid, you flip your entire library over, but Deep Analysis lets you pay 2 mana to get your entire Doomsday pile out. So that one is sneakily good, and it also works really, really well with Unctus if you have excess mana when you're trying to combo off. If you're trying to win with Unctus with only 1 or 2 cards in hand, being able to go up to 3 or 4 cards in hand can let you hold on to a Pact of Negation and, you know, some other form of counter magic or something else you might need when you're going through your Unctus line that can save you for a lot of games.
Yeah, this card's also really good in draft. Like, if you see this card in draft, I mean, it's not like amazing or anything, but like, especially if you're going against like a control opponent in draft, like just having Deep Analysis is pretty good, I feel like.
Yeah, Deep Analysis has come in very clutch a lot of times. And, you know, worst thing comes to worst, you exile it with 4 time counters and draw 2 cards off of it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to end up being free in 4 activations anyway.
Right.
Yeah. I'd say Fate Stitcher and Deep Analysis both, being able to come back from your graveyard during Unctus and Hermit Druid lines has been very powerful. Another one that actually solved a lot of not problems, but made things a lot easier to explain is Archdruid's Charm. Archdruid's Charm has not only been like done all of the things that it says it does, but it actually also lets you combo off with Cephalid Coliseum as a win condition at instant speed. Because Archdruid's Charms puts the land directly back into play, and when we're comboing, we also have the ability to untap it. We can keep looping Cephalid Coliseum to force our opponents to draw and discard through their entire deck at instant speed. And that's been very clean.
Wait, could you explain? I didn't really get how this works.
Yeah. I'm looking back on this list real quick. I was like, wait.
This deck layers so much better than any other deck I've played. So the first ability on Archdruid's Charm.
Just hearing that term.
The first ability on Archdruid's Charms puts a land directly into play tapped. Assuming that we're going infinite and we have the ability to untap everything at instant speed, which is basically all of the combos in this deck. Between Archdruid's Charm, Endurance, Noxious Revival, and Cephalid Coliseum, we can loop through our entire library, keep putting Cephalid Coliseum into play off of the Archdruid's Charm, activating it because we can, either kill our own stuff or counter our own stuff, or just loot with Unctus itself to get the threshold again, and then activate the Cephalid Coliseum, targeting our opponents to draw and discard.
Are you on Noxious and Memory?
I'm on Noxious, Memory's Journey, and Endurance.
Yeah, that alone is a loop right there with Noxious and Memory's Journey.
Yeah.
Because you can just use Memory's Journey to put that and Noxious back and the Cephalid, and then boop, boop, boop.
Yep.
Put it into play. Damn, man. That's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. My eyes went... even bad. I know you're low on clones, which is unusual. Like, I only see like the Fimage in there, not even a Flesh, or a Metamorph.
I've gone back and forth on which clone I want. Currently, it's Fimage, Flesh Duplicate. Sometimes the Vanishing Counters is relevant, which is why I'm currently on Fimage. I'm currently not on Phyrexian Metamorph because if you're casting it for Alaundo, it's 4 activations rather than 2. For the Phantasmal Image. That's the primary reason for that one. It's 100% justified if you want to swap that clone out for Phyrexian Metamorph if you're in a 1-ring heavy meta. Which my current one is really not. They're not playing very many 1-rings. Yeah. But yeah, if you're in a 1-ring heavy meta, I would probably make that switch. But the clones in general, like obviously, people play a lot of clones just to copy Dockside, but Dockside doesn't do as much for us as it would in most other decks. We don't care about mana, we care about untaps.
I was thinking
which
that
is not the same kind of resource. Obviously, there are turns when a Dockside's great, which is why I do have the one clone. But yeah,
Yeah, because
see,
if
basically-
you get a bunch of mana, you can't really dump it into much. Like your
yeah,
curve
we
isn't
don't
that
have
high.
Thrasios, we don't have a
Yeah.
And like no wheels, so I guess copying a Bowmaster just gets rid of a Bowmaster, but you have Archdruid's Charm to fight a Bowmaster if you need to, and some other things that can deal with it.
Yeah, we're that's part of our interaction is we're
And
specifically gearing against.
Went over it.
Yeah, we went over it. If we have the ability to go infinite, we can just keep responding to the Bowmaster triggers until we cast a Thoracle and win at instant speed. Which, again, like I said, a lot of our interaction suite is geared towards defending against Bowmasters and Curse Totem. That's why we have Spell Snare specifically. Is it hits both Dockside, Breach, Bowmasters, Curse Totem, Drannith. A lot of the things that we care about.
Ooh, while I got you on that Spell Snare comment, what are some strategies this deck struggles against?
Curse Totem.
Yeah,
Curse Totem very
that might be
specifically.
an answer.
Yeah. Curse Totem very specifically. Yeah.
Like anything that steals or seals your effect of your commander or your tapper. It's like you can mess with the commander, that's fine, but the creatures. Listen, like I imagine like the worst thing for you is like a humility drop down.
Yeah, we care a lot about humility. Like I said, that's partly why we have the interaction suite geared to what it is the 2023 into 2024 has actually been really good for this deck. Between Archdruid's Charm and Legolas's Quick Reflexes, both have been fantastic. Legolas's Quick Reflexes is a one-sided board wipe, if you haven't realized that yet.
Yeah, I just realized because you go, I'm going to target a Phaedo Alchemist and I will kill all y'all's things.
Yes,
what?
I kill all of my opponent's creatures with the Phaedo Alchemist. Yep.
Just go away, you're all dead.
Also, just targeting your Alaundo just as a protection and then activating it 3 or 4 more times afterwards. Like, all right, kill your Thrasios, kill your thing, kill these 2 other things that are relevant. It's Legolas's Quick Reflexes has been fantastic.
It turns it into like a goblin sharpshooter, basically.
Yeah, it really does. Like I said, there are ways to it.
Gone.
It actually it truly is a one-sided board wipe, and has been stellar. Archdruid's Charm as well. Archdruid's Charm specifically, giving a 1/1 counter to let it kill Drana and Linvala because they have 4 toughness when your commander's 3 power, has been really great. One swap I have thought about is Resculpt for Rapid Hybridization, just because it can also get Curse Totem.
I like Resculpt. You should switch over to it.
That makes sense.
I think I will.
The Exile.
I wasn't sure just how many. Between Force of Vigor, Archdruid's Charm, Beseiju, I think those are the 3 primary ones I have for getting rid of Curse Totem specifically after it's resolved.
Also hits your opponent's 1 rings. By the way, I did realize your deck probably struggles against, like, basically it looks like it's going to struggle against Mardu if it struggles against anything. As weird as that sounds, it's going to struggle not against like the stack decks it's going to struggle against aren't going to be green stack decks.
Yeah,
it's going to be like these Grixis or these Mardu decks.
Yeah, it's Curse Totem's is the biggest one, 100%. We can play through a Drannith without too much trouble. What you can usually do is either go for an Unctus line, which doesn't need to cast anything from anywhere other than your hand. That's usually the quickest change of plan that you can make, but also you don't have to cast the cards from exile. At that point, your Alaundo activations just become a draw discard in a lot of scenarios, so you can still activate through Drannith Magistrate. Notion Thief is one that I am glad is seeing a lot less play at the moment. That one does shut us down a little bit, as well as Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. That one shuts us off. But like I said, that's part of why we have the Unctus and the Hermit Druid to take those stacks pieces away from turning us off completely.
Boromir too. Boromir saw like a good amount of play for like 3 months, and then everyone just kind of
Yeah.
dropped it.
Yeah.
People shouldn't drop that card.
I'm not super high.
Or
Like, it's okay.
If you're running, I have a firm opinion. If you're running Lavinia, you should just swap it over for Boromir. It's one less color. 3 mana is the same as 2 mana with 2 color pips for the most part. You know, like
Yeah,
and
usually.
the ability to stack it.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
But
So, yeah.
I
Go
gotta
ahead.
say, man, like the pivots are very key. But now, like, what's like your nightmare like deck that you just go like, I just don't want this deck.
There's not really a specific deck. Like I said, the Cursed Totem heavy decks, the Adrenaline Vala Cursed Totem, those kinds of ones are obviously a problem for a lot of the things that we're trying to do. The full turbo pods, when you're the only responsible player at the table, are always going to be difficult, just because you are so mid-rangey and you obviously can't control the table. We have a decent amount of counter spells, but not nearly enough to control the table. We're not Italian.
Right.
We can usually have enough interaction to get us at least into the mid game in most pods. I think the ROG size, the true turbo things tend to be the most troublesome.
Yeah. I was definitely thinking that. Because, yeah, it seems like it wouldn't be that hard to kind of get under this deck. Like, because, like, your turn 2 or 3, you're casting your commander. I mean, you'd like to do it sooner, but yeah, I'm sure on average you're getting about turn 2, turn 3.
Yeah, most of the time it's turn 2. I have a pretty high success rate of a turn 2 Alaundo.
Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have to wait to kind of build up this value engine. Like, the more we talk about it, the more I kind of see how this play pattern works. You start with, like, you play him out, you get an untapper going, you use him, and you put you choose, because, like, his ability lets you pick any card you want out of your hand. So you choose an untapper, you use the ability again, you put the untapper down, it gets haste, so then you go again, and then you can put, you just kind of keep going.
The window where people win against this deck tend to be the window when Alaundo is still summoning sick. Because after that point, you're, like I said, you do get to just draw your card for turn and pass the turn, because you just keep casting spells off of Alaundo and snowball that way, to where you don't need to use your lands as a resource to continue developing your own board state, and you can keep up your interaction through those middling turns.
Right. Quick question on this. So, if you have a 0 drop, do you just cast it instantly?
No, there's never a time counter to be removed, so the spell just goes to exile forever. That's part of the reason why we're not on very many X spells, we're not on the Green Sun Zenith. We're not real deep on those. We do have Finale and Chord, but those are just the best ones in the colors, just because they're really good. We can those both do very specific things, but we're not on Green Sun Zenith. We're not on a lot of the other X spells that you might see.
Okay, so yeah, I think we've gotten through most of our questions. Now we'd like to go a little bit deeper into the list, into some, like, individual card choices. So you got some fairly standard dorks. You have Arbor, Birds, Delighted Halfling, Elvish Mystic, Benhar Elves, Lenoir. In fact, you have almost all the mana dorks that you can run, right?
Everything except Boreal Druid, I believe, is the only one we're not playing.
Yeah, okay.
No Priest of Titania.
Yep, no Priest of Titania. The extra green mana just doesn't get us that far, and other people just aren't running as many dorks as they used to for obvious reasons.
What have you thought about Bloom Tender?
2 colors for Bloom Tender just doesn't seem to usually be enough. If I was going to run a 2 mana dork of sorts, it would probably be Sanctum Weaver, because we are on 8 enchantments plus Sanctum Weaver and Destiny Spinners, which brings it up to 10. And it's also a blue outlet for your Pemenzora and Freed from the Real. So if you were going to play a 2 mana dork that taps for a bunch of mana, that would probably be the one over Bloom Tender, because it can tap for multiple blue.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna talk about the Shrieking Drake in the room. What's with the Shrieking Drake?
It does a couple of very, very good things for the deck. Number one, it combos with Intruder Alarm.
Yes.
We're an Intruder Alarm deck. As long as you have anything that taps for a blue or untaps a thing that taps for a blue, it just combos off with Intruder Alarm. You can actually do a sneaky thing with Forbidden Orchard. As long as you have a thing that untaps a land, you can keep giving your opponent's spirits to keep triggering Intruder Alarm to go infinite that way.
Oh my god.
And then, yeah, that's a fun one.
So Shrieking Drake's a ham sandwich.
Shrieking Drake's a ham sandwich. It also has some utility in the deck itself. If you don't have any cards in hand, or all your cards in hand are counter spells, you can keep exiling the Shrieking Drake to your Alaundo activations rather than exile the counter spells to Alaundo.
That's interesting.
Okay.
I like that.
Because it's not a May to exile, you have to exile a card from your hand every time you activate. It's just kind of a buffer card that prevents you from exiling the interaction cards that you don't want to actually exile.
Right, because if you put a counterspell to Alaundo, it's completely worthless. Like, I mean,
sometimes you can activate Alaundo. Say you exile a Swan Song, you can activate Alaundo twice and cast the Swan Song to counter a thing. Like, you still cast the spell.
But your deck
it's just
seems,
not always.
Yeah, like your deck seems like it's want to be more proactive and like use him more. And if you have a counterspell sitting out there, it's like it kind of disincentivizes you from doing the thing your deck wants to do.
Yeah, but you can actually also use that as a political tool. Say, hey, I've got this counterspell in exile. I'm just going to sit here, and it's going to sit here like a loaded gun. Say, hey, I'm going to counter whatever thing I want to during whatever it becomes relevant, and kind of tempo out people out from trying to go off on specific turns.
Okay. So I know we talked about a Phaedo Alchemist a little bit. We saw this last week, didn't we, Samurai? Phaedo Alchemist.
Probably in the Unctus deck.
We were looking at Unctus.
Unctus, that's right.
I did not lose to an Unctus deck yet. Haven't lost one. Haven't won a game with one in the pod either.
Interesting. The curse of mono blue.
I'm like, I just want to state that haven't lost to that deck, but definitely haven't won in the pod that it's in. So like, I know Phaedo Alchemist loops. I commented on a Game Nights video a long time ago. I was like, that loops like with the ham sandwich. But I noticed you also have a Vizier of Tumbling Sands.
Vizier of Tumbling Sands. Yeah.
Question: how many people have you gotten with the cycle on that?
So the cycle on Vizier of Tumbling Sands has let me win over top of multiple interaction pieces before. Like I said, that's one of the things that this deck does really well, is people try and stop you and you just win again over top, over and over and over again. So in even in my most recent tournament in the Breakfast Club one, Food Fight, Vizier was part of my combo winning turn where I had 4 lands in play and no other permanents because I think there was a Cyclonic Rift or something. And Vizier, I was able to convolute something together where I got an Unctus in play and I brought back a Fate Stitcher and I was able to piece some things together. But yeah, Vizier's been very, very strong with the cycling ability. It's not really there for the cycling ability. Most of the 3-mana untappers are mostly just there because there aren't more 2-mana untappers. Right. If there were more Curious Follower, you would probably play those instead. But these 3 just tend to be the best ones.
Have you ever morphed a Phaedo Alchemist?
No, I have never morphed.
Never morphed it. Okay.
It has morph? That's crazy.
It does have morph. You can play it.
I am surprised you have never morphed it. You know what I would love to see someone do? Would be like, I'm gonna cybernetic conversion. You're a Phaedo Alchemist, and you'd be like, okay.
Deal.
Just a straight up deal.
Resolves.
Flip over. Oh my
Destiny
god!
Spinner
Like,
up next.
Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah,
I've
you don't want
noticed-
your stuff being countered. Oh,
Yeah.
it hits enchantments too.
It is enchantments, and enchantments is very relevant for us. It's also a win condition, secretly, because of Archdruid's Charm. You do the same loop where you would normally Cephalid Coliseum. You can Archdruid's Charm, put all of your lands into play, and activate Destiny Spinner, and turn all your lands into 10/10s. And trample and haste.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
100s, 100s, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's
Gilded
especially
Drake.
very good if you know your opponent has like a Cyclonic Rift or something.
Yeah.
Can't rift these.
Yeah.
So I noticed like we've got Seedborn because this is just good value deck.
Mhm.
Oh man, there was something I was thinking about. Why are you not running this? I can't remember what it is now.
Is it
Not Kinnan,
Murkfiend?
Mercfiend Liege? No. I know what that is, and I also know you don't want to run that. Because like it only untaps your creatures and it's expensive as heck.
Yeah,
Let's give it +1/+1 though, doesn't it?
It gives green creatures +1/+1 and blue creatures +1/+1. So it makes Alaundo into 5/7.
I mean,
I've played it in the deck. I just have never needed this second Seedboard Muse. I'd rather just find Seedboard Muse.
Play one Seedborn Muse.
never needed second Seedborn Muse. Come on, man. Everybody needs.
I do have Quest for Renewal, which is basically a Seedboard Muse in this deck.
I did see that. Oh, that's what I was wondering. I didn't see like the enchantments that let you untap, and I didn't see Sting.
Enchantments that let me untap. Are you talking about Instill, Energy, and what's the other?
Yeah. Obviously, you know what they are. But have you tried Sting?
Sting.
I don't know what that is either. You guys are gonna have to tell me.
It's an equipment, but it makes your creature. It makes the equipped creature untap during each combat.
Oh,
you're talking about the Glinting Dagger, the Lord of the Rings one.
Yeah. I don't think it's Glinting Dagger. I think it's Sting.
It's Sting the Glinting Dagger.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. I tried it for a little bit. It does give creatures haste, which is very relevant, and untapping each combat is pretty good. I tried to limit the number of equipment I play just because you don't get immediate value off of them with your commander. Most of the time, that's the only reason why I'm not on, some of the Swiftfoot boots, stuff like that. There are other equipment like what's the name of it? Umbral Mantle is another equipment that you could definitely run in this deck, and it's another way to untap creatures. But one of the best reasons to run this deck is because you can win at instant speed, and those are not ways to do so.
Okay.
Illusionist Bracer is just really, really good because you can just equip it to Alaundo and get double Alaundo activations. Yeah. Like I said, that's one of the things that I strive for in this deck is all of the combos are just good for value on top of being combo pieces.
Sting does give haste though.
It does give haste, and I did try it for a little bit. I just didn't love.
No, I imagine people the minute you play Sting, people are probably targeting
Just kill.
you.
Yeah.
There's certain things that's like you can't have nice things sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, I played a Glinthorn. This is a value Glinthorn. No one believes that.
Yeah, bullshit.
What? There's a Draneth out. This Glinthorn is here straight for value. I mean, depending on how good the value is, maybe you don't survive to see the end of the value. And that's kind of the thing with like Sting. It's like, I'm going to play Sting. It's like, what does it do? Haste and Seedborn. Nope.
Yeah, people don't normally just let you sit there and do it over and over again. One of the reasons,
weirdly enough, is it's not a creature, so it's definitely more fragile.
Yeah, it's more fragile, leaves you more open to removal and interaction. There are a number of different reasons. There's a lot of cards that you could play in this deck that would do a thing that you want them to do, but they tend to be more reliant on having your commander actively going already, which is one of the things I tried to minimize with the deck.
Tracks.
Talk to us a little bit about Gilded Drake. Is this just there because it's good, or is there something specific in an opponent's deck that you're really happy to Drake?
I've gilded Drake Croms before. I've gilded Draked, a lot of I've gilded Drake of Bowmasters. It kind of just stops a lot of the creature value or creature hate pieces that stop us. I've gilded Drake Grand Magistrate. I've gilded Drake a Grand Arbiter, or a Grand Abolisher before.
Wow. Jeez.
It does a lot of really good utility stuff, and Gilded Drake at instant speed tends to be really, really good, just in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing. Your commander kind of pseudo gives a lot of stuff flash and hastes, which is pretty nutty.
Yeah.
Like it turns all these like Manglehorn and a lot of these other things into actual interaction, which is interesting. Oh yeah, that brings us to our next one. Well, we talked about Hermit Druid and Kiara's already. How has Malevolent Hermit been for you? Because I'm a fan of this card. I don't play it in my deck, which is Blue Farm, but I kind of want to. It's just really funny.
We're in Simic. We don't really get actual Grand Abolishers very much, so this is kind of a third copy between Destiny Spinner, Spellskite, and Malevolent Hermit on the backside. One of the ways you lose during your Hermit Druid activations is somebody counters your Memories Journey or something, because we're not. A lot of the Hermit Druid decks run multiple of that, the Memories Journey effect. We're not, because we're not all in on the Hermit Druid. But having Malevolent Hermit be able to come back for 3 mana as sort of a pseudo Grand Abolisher tends to be pretty strong. And even just the fun side can actually just get you into the mid game, just kind of as a rattlesnake on the battlefield a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, it's real nasty. Like it's I guess for people that are listening at home, Malevolent Hermit is a 2-mana 2/1. You can pay blue and sacrifice it and counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. And then it also has Disturb for 2 and a blue, so 3 mana. And you can cast it from the graveyard as its backside, which is a flying 2/2, and it says non-creature spells you control can't be countered, and if it would be put into graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So it basically gives your stuff uncounterable if you're able to cast it from the grave. Your non-creature spells.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got through that one. We talked about Fimbage already. We talked about Seeker of Skybreak, which is a 2/1 untap target creature. You look like you want to say something, Samurai. What's up?
Deep Analysis?
Deep Analysis.
We talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. Like I said, it just makes your Unctus and Hermit Druid lines a lot cleaner. Like I said, trying to combo off with Unctus when you only have 1 or 2 cards in hand lets you not hold up protection a lot of the time. So having the ability to pay 2 mana and 3 life to draw 2 extra cards and going from 1 card in hand to 3 cards in hand lets you sculpt your hand, because when you're doing Unctus lines, you're sculpting the perfect cards in hand, essentially, is what you're doing. So usually you end up going, all right, I have 1 card in hand, I can only get Thassa's, whereas if I have 3 off of a Deep Analysis, I get Thassa's, Pact of Negation, and some other counterspell or something like that.
Or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder, have you seen some of the new cards from Thunder Junction? That might
I've
be
been something.
like Lock and Load is big. Is a little interesting.
What does that do?
Lock and Load is a 2 and a blue sorcery. Draw a card, then draw a card for each other instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. It has plot 3 and a blue. Plot allows you to exile the card, and then you may cast it on another turn at sorcery speed for free.
Yeah.
Does this deck really casting that many instants and sorceries in a turn?
There are some turns when you do, but not often. There are a lot of storm-like turns because we are playing Vitalize, Dramatic Reversal, and Mobilize, which I'm sure you guys have. We're thinking about asking, but they all kind of do the same thing. But yeah, lock and load. I think Deep Analysis, specifically because you can cast it from the graveyard, has a lot of utility, and it's only 2 mana.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I think we've kind of talked about all the creatures here. Maybe Ireth is worth mentioning. She's a 3-mana 1/4 human cleric. Untap another target permanent, or she also has, or you can tap her and untap 2 other target legendary creatures specifically. I'm guessing this second line comes up useful sometimes.
It's mostly there for the first one, just untapping any permanent. But what you can sometimes do is, if you either Gilded Drake somebody's legendary creature, or if you have an Agatha Soul Cauldron in play and you give Unctus, because those are really the only legendary creatures you're playing, some sort of untap ability, you can actually go infinite with those. Because Irith lets you untap your commander and the other legendary with the tap ability.
Right.
And then use that tap ability to untap Irith and kind of go infinite. It's pretty rare that line becomes relevant, but it's mostly there for the first line.
And she's also 1/4, which is hard to kill in general by bowmasters and what have you.
Yeah. Got the booty.
Yeah, she does. Is Face Stitcher something you're wanting to Hermit Druid out, or is that more just kind of there because it's good?
It does, like I said, just like Deep Analysis, it does a lot of little things. It is there just because it's good. But being able to bring it back with the Unearth for 1 with haste is really good, because most of the time it can be kind of a ritual where you can turn 1 blue mana into multiple blue, or a Gaia's Cradle activation or something like that. And sort of be able to filter out that way. Like I said, it mostly becomes relevant during your Unctus or Hermit Druid lines when you're tight on mana. But it is also just an untapper that taps down or untaps a thing.
Yeah.
And tapping down, it's the only one that actually taps down another permanent, which can actually be really relevant, because you can tap down somebody's big creature that's hitting you in the face or something like that. The I don't know, Slicer or some other beater that is doing a lot of combat damage to you. Being able to tap it down for combat lets you keep you alive.
Technically, Kelpie Guide can do it too, right? But you have to have 8 lands, which is
that's not common.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the sorcery section of it, we talked about Finale, we talked about Deep Analysis already. Mobilize and Vitalize are both green. One's a sorcery, one's an instant that just untaps all your creatures. Makes a lot of sense. You're probably casting this for free with your commander anyway, so it just lets you kind of go again.
Yep. It at minimum, when you're casting it off your commander, it lets you activate your commander again. If you have multiple untappers, it untaps all of them. It lets you activate 4 more times or whatever. Like I said, it can be a ritual. It can be activations of Alaundo. It can be Vitalize. Can be another way to just, all right, you're gonna try and interact with my Pemenzora or whatever. Win again on top of it. That kind of thing.
Right. Talk to us a little bit about Sylvan Tutor, and I think you're on. Are you on Worldly too? Yes. Yep. So yeah, you're usually getting Seedborn with this, or what are you thinking?
Seedborn Muse, Unctus, Hermit Druid, an untapper, Shrieking Drake. We have a lot of creatures that we care about finding with some consistency. You know, Manglehorn if there's a Curse Totem. Because it blows up the Curse Totem. You can do things with Endurance, where if somebody's trying to Underworld Breach, you can Sylvan Tutor at instant speed, find your Endurance, and cast the Endurance to stop the Underworld Breach player. We've got some utility creatures that finding creatures is pretty good, and part of them, because they go on top of your library, and because if you cast them off of Alaundo, they cantrip themselves, it's not actually card disadvantage in these cases.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. See, a lot of the 2 battlefield tutors tend to be X spells. I thought about Neoform and Eldritch Evolution. Those are, I guess, notable excludes. We tend to be sort of a critical mass deck, is the best way I have to explain it, where we don't really want to be sacrificing our untappers or necessarily our mana dorks even, because they let us, critical mass and snowball in that way. Obviously, you can, neoform a dork into a hermit druid, but
Right.
it kind of does. It kind of does the same thing as Sylvan Tutor in a lot of instances, where this doesn't net you negative in terms of mana and creatures on board.
Okay.
So, like, I'm looking at your instance, and obviously we've got the normal counter spells. Sweet. We've got a lot of the normal interactions. We're on Spell Snare because, again, you hate 2-drops.
We do
Absolutely hate them. We're on Noxious because we do loops. We do these endurance dream loops. These memory journeys loops. We're on Dramatic Reversal, obviously, because you do like to untap your creatures. Go figure.
And the One Ring.
But what's your intuition pile?
Intuition pile's kind of a sweet one. You can do it a couple of different ways, and it kind of depends what you have on board. If you have basically nothing in play, the intuition pile tends to be Noxious Revival, Hermit Druid, and Agatha's Soul Cauldron, assuming you have any Mana Dork in play. Which all of that whole pile basically guarantees you either a Hermit Druid in your hand, or if they give you the Soul Cauldron or the Noxious Revival, a hasty Hermit Druid with a Mana Dork in play. You can also do intuition piles with Vitalize, Mobilize, and Dramatic Reversal, where if you're doing kind of a stormy turn, you can just guarantee one of those kinds of effects. You can also do a similar thing where you kind of force your opponents to give you a counterspell where you basically entomb a Fate Stitcher and a Deep Analysis and force them to give you the Force of Will or whatever in a pinch.
Right. So I noticed you're on Dramatic Reversal, but no Isochron Scepter. Yeah, there's no Isochron Scepter in here. Why? So if you're already on Reversal, why not run the Scepter as well?
You 100% can be a Scepter deck. I kind of have in the sideboard kind of that whole pile with Transmute Artifact, Spellseeker, Scepter, and even Benefactor's Draft, which can also be a Isochron Scepter bottom in this deck. Most of the time, Isochron Scepter relies on having your commander be your outlet, which is one of the things that I've kind of tried to avoid because it's a 4-drop that's summoning sick. Because if you don't have Alaundo in play, you don't really have an outlet for the Isochron Scepter on taps to really do anything other than netting you infinite mana, which you still can't do anything with. So like I said, Isochron Scepter just tends to put a lot more of that pressure on Alaundo, which I've tried to avoid with this specific list.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. All right, so I guess on to that was really the last kind of interesting card we saw in Instance, right? I mean, we have Force of Vigor and Chord, but those are semi-standard.
Those are boring.
So those are just
Boring
good.
cards.
No.
Those are boring cards. Like, they snooze me. Like, Force of Vigor, oh man, like Artifact Enchantment and Green Destroyer. Okay. Chord of Calling, everybody knows. Just one of the best green spells of all time that they gave out with, like, what was it, like, it wasn't even buy a box. I think it was just like buying packs during a certain set of time. Going to the store right after COVID was like, they're like, we incentivize you with Chord of Calling, and it's like, am I running green at the moment? I'm not, but I could be.
I'll take it, man. I took it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, I did too. I took that. I took the Mech Walking Ballista. Ooh, that was tight.
One's sweet. I do still have that one too.
The Mech Hangerback Walker too, and then the Reliquary Tower. The Reliquary Tower is probably my favorite one that I still own. But I'm like looking at your artifacts, man, because your last suite of instance is kind of boring. So we got standard rock package. We've talked about illusionist bracers. If you just want to explain what that effect is real quick. Again,
illusionist bracers just says whenever an ability of equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. I kind of went over that. It goes infinite with Opheto and Seeker. It can also go infinite if you have two of your other untappers that can untap each other.
Right.
Great value.
Great value. If you just equip it to your commander, double activations of Alaundo every time you activate him is going to get you places.
Card is nutty.
Card just does a lot of stuff that goes infinite.
We've gone over what Agatha's does. Obviously, you have 1,000 Years Elixir for the pseudo haste and the untap effect. I guess you like untap effects in this deck for some reason.
I think you do most of the time.
Yeah, might be like a sub theme, I guess. And then you've got the One Ring. No surprises there. We go to your enchantment suite, and we've got Utopia, Wild Growth, Mystic Remorse. But then I can't help but notice you got sneaky with Quest for Renewal.
Quest for Renewal. We turn it on the same turn it comes down basically every game.
Every time.
Almost every time. If it doesn't, you're playing it on like turn 2 because you don't have something else to do, which is not common. Like I said, if as long as you have a Phaedo Alchemist or Seeker can turn it on all by itself because it just untaps itself 4 times. Most of the time, you can turn it on with Alaundo, an Untapper, and a Mana Dork. Is a really common way to turn it on. Activate Alaundo gets the first one. Activate the Untapper targeting Alaundo gets you the second one. Activate Alaundo again gets you the third, and then just tap a Mana Dork to get it to the fourth. It also triggers when creatures attack too, which we really do not attack almost ever in this deck. We don't attack in this deck.
But blue farm players got to die eventually.
Eventually. Sometimes we'll hit in for 2 with a Manglehorn or something, but...
Yeah.
Ganesh just like, blue farm players. Yeah, get those guys.
Intruder Alarm makes a lot of sense, because...
Intruder Alarm has been a stacks piece before. It's been great.
Wow.
Have you ever played an Intruder Alarm against an Agila player?
Yes.
They go to make like five warriors or whatever. You just activate your commander 5 times.
That's pretty funny, actually. Yeah, if they try to go off, you're drawing with them, and
the Agila players just literally cannot go off with the Intruder Alarm in play in an Alaundo. Like I said, it's been a stacks piece before. It puts people in really weird scenarios, and a lot of times we have Shrieking Drake, we have Forbidden Orchard, which is the sneaky combo piece with it. We have 26 creatures in the deck. We go off with it pretty quick.
Yeah.
My gosh, brutal, man. And then obviously we're on Pimmons and Ristic Study and Freed from the Real, but I'm looking at your land suite.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the Cephalid, you're on the Beseiju. You're on the Ottawa, bruh. But I don't see no Centaur Garden.
Nope, no Centaur Garden.
What is that?
It's target creature gets +2/+2 with the threshold. I think that's the one.
Yeah. Oh, that land. Oh my god. It's like the bad Cephalid, basically.
No. It's the murder Cephalid. The murder garden. You see, so no one has ever played Centaur Garden and been like, yeah, don't worry, it's just value.
No, you're making your Sabala or some silly thing bigger, or like Sisei, and you just win the game, right?
You're throwing it on a devoted druid.
Yeah.
I don't see the Centaur Garden, but I gotta say, man, like looking at your things, I hate you with Minimo. I hate the Nicholas. I hate the Cradle. This is not fair. You shouldn't be allowed to run these with untappers.
Yep.
That's what caused you. I'm not here to die to lands, man. Don't kill me with your lands, please. Like, my god, man.
Like I said, Forbidden Orchard, just, oops, you've got 2 blockers for a Timna. Go ahead, you kill it. People do not kill Timna enough. Mark my words.
Ganesh, do people kill Timna enough?
It's really hard to say. Maybe not, but at the same time, like with the meta going things the way it is, I'm seeing a lot more people just have blockers for Timna naturally. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like for some reason, so it's
better.
like Timna's getting markedly worse than when I first started playing Blue Farm.
My god, you poor Timna players. What will we ever do for you?
I don't know, man.
We'll take you to the old folks' home and shoot you.
No. No. Oh, actually, hedge mage, hedge maze. Sorry, not hedge mage. That's a bush wizard. That's an entirely different thing. Yeah, talk to us about the surveil land. I guess this is a lot better with Alaundo, or no?
It's a third fetchable source because we're a Hermit Druid deck. We can't run basics. Having no basics to fetch off of our fetch lands is obviously going to be sometimes an issue. Most of the time it's not. But yeah, having the third source has been really great. You can also do fun stuff with it, like worldly tutoring in response to the surveil trigger, so you can entomb your Fate Stitcher and silly stuff like that. I've done that before. But it's mostly there just as a third fetchable source. Like I said, we play a land and pass really, really often. So the one tapped land has just not been a problem.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. I got to tell you guys, if you're not picking up the surveil lands now, you're going to hate yourself in a year, because like literally every legacy video I see has them, every modern video I see has them, every standard video I see has them, every vintage video I see has them. And as I have tested them out more and more in cEDH, if you're in like two colors, you don't need fully untapped lands, in all honesty, because like a lot of the times you're running bad colored lands, like, you know. And this is super good on turn 1, turn 2, or late game, when you're like, I really need to make sure my next card matters.
I don't know about turn 1, turn 2, but I can see fetching this like in the late game, where like you're on the end step of your turn of someone else's, and then you just get a free surveil, basically.
Yeah.
Turn 1, turn 2 is just you don't need the land as much.
I have thought about cutting a fetch or a different land. Maybe Flooded Grove would be the next one in, because it can filter Gaia's Cradle mana into blue sources, which can help you go off with Pemenzora and Freed from the Real sometimes. But yeah, it's a relatively standard mana base for Hermit Druid deck, I guess.
Right. Okay, so I think that does it for the deck. Mostly everything else looks pretty standard. I guess let's talk a little bit. You have a very, very beautiful sideboard here that I'm actually interested in. Why are you not on Emergence Zone? Is it just because it's colorless?
Our commander kind of does what Emergence Zone wants to do already. Like we already break timing restrictions on almost all of the things that we cast.
Right.
We also have Born Upon a Wind, which kind of does the double duty that can also help us win at instant speed. It just wasn't necessarily a colorless source that I felt like I needed.
Right.
We're obviously a mana dork deck, so yeah, we're obviously a mana dork deck, so we need untapped green on turn 1 really frequently. And we're already on C1. Nykthos doesn't tap. Cradle doesn't tap. Sometimes Gemstone Governs does. But yeah, untapped green is just a high priority, and it just felt like I didn't need Emergence Zone very often.
This guy running, you put Sylvan Library in the gosh darn side.
Sylvan Library is a bad card. 4 life for 1 card is just
no. Please understand, it's not 4 life for 1 card these days. It's actually 10 life for 2 cards, maybe for 3 cards.
Why?
10 life. Because Bowmaster.
Oh, yeah. And it kills your Kinnan, right?
Immediately kills your creature. It's like the best situation is it's 10 life.
Yeah, that's
a terrible rate.
It's just not a rate that's good enough anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really not. That's not good enough, in my opinion. I noticed that you basically have the other Revitalize effect in your sideboard. I'm assuming you're just debating whether you need to be faster or need better card selection sometimes.
Benefactor's Draft plays it was mostly in there to be part of the Isochron Scepter package. Because your creatures are able to untap the Isochron Scepter, you can use it as a bottom piece to the Isochron Scepter.
Better dramatic.
It's in a lot of cases it can be a better dramatic reversal. You can also just cast it when people are going to block Najeela tokens or something and draw 4 cards. It just tend to
Oh.
be the worst of the untappers.
Mhm.
The untap.
I don't know. The
sorceries.
sorcery one isn't as good. But I think that's one of those things where you switch back and forth. That's why it's in the sideboard. It's like, do I like the sorcery one, or do I like the drop instant?
Yeah, the one difference in mana
Matters.
sometimes relevant.
Yeah.
The having to spend 3 activations on Alaundo to cast the spell as opposed to 2 with mobilize
Matters. Yeah.
matters sometimes. But like I said, that's kind of a flex slot. I've thought about going down on that kind of effect anyways, just because the floor is obviously high, but the ceiling is pretty low. So it just tended to be the 4th one, and that's the one I'm off right now.
That tracks.
Why counterbalance?
Counterbalance is really good. We reset the top card of our library every time we activate Alaundo.
That's right. Yeah.
We were on Sensei's top. Sensei's top could also be an outlet for us in a lot of cases.
I see it. Just put all the draw triggers on the stack after untapping it over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yep.
Countertop was definitely a thing that we can do. Counterbalance just hasn't been consistent enough in a lot of these games. We run a lot of 3s, which isn't really a mana value that most people care about all that often. Like obviously,
Yeah.
You're definitely not on 2s, which is kind of like the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because you run so many niche cards for this deck, you're not going to be matching people on CMC very often. So counterbalance becomes worse and worse as it goes on, becomes more convoluted.
I didn't really think about that. Yeah.
And also you got to run top with it if you want real success. And then it's like, if you don't have both of them together, you're kind of running at a little deficit of value and a little consistency. So yeah, it just makes sense. Obviously you think about dress down as much as I do. That card probably comes in every couple months.
Yeah, it's dress down's really powerful. Like obviously shutting down our own activated abilities kind of sucks sometimes, but like sometimes dress down's really good. Yeah. Sometimes dress down's is really good.
Dress down a trick bind swap out for me all the time.
Yeah. I have thought a lot more about trick bind recently.
I run it because I run fatal turn spells, so it's like I was like, you know what? This is definitely staying in over dress down because I don't like killing myself. I don't like unaliving myself. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm loving that you have the whole Isochron package in the sideboard.
Yeah.
And the more I look at how much you had to take out of for that package, the more I think you should just never put it back in, because you would have to put back in 6 cards.
Yeah. For that package. Isochron, Muddle, Benefactors, Transmute, Spellseeker is 5. I think it's 5. Like I said, it's a combo that works. It's a combo that can win you some games. It dies to a lot more interaction points than a lot of the other combos in this deck. You know, Collector Oof, regular counter spells because you're casting the dramatic reversal. It just has a lot more interaction points than the combos that are currently in the deck.
Why are you not on? I'll go real quick. Why are you not on Mystical Tutor? I see like almost every cEDH deck that's in blue run this. Oh, you're gonna ask the same thing. Sorry.
Mystical Tutor, we could. Obviously, it has some uses. You know, finding Intuition, finding Finale. There are some Mystical Tutor targets, but there's not like one card that wins the game other than necessarily Intuition. And we just have so many other ways to win that we aren't really an instant or sorcery based deck that we just haven't really needed it.
Okay. I see the problem as with Mystical Tutor, you're tutoring for a tutor every time.
Yeah. It's
like you're not tutoring for removal because you don't really run removal. You're not tutoring for like a combo piece because none of your combo pieces are instants at the moment. So it's like, what are you tutoring for? Well, Green Sun Zenith or like Finale. It's like tutoring for a tutor to play the tutor after it.
You might just want to go faster. Maybe it seems like
it just felt awkward every time it was in the deck. just hasn't been necessary. Like I said, it works with the Isocron Scepter package, just because trying to find the bottom.
Trust me, dude, I get you on that. It's hard in these colors to find the actual package for certain things.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at it, I'm like, yeah, it's just mostly Isocron packages in there, and then you got some cards that'll never come back in that you'll look at every couple of months. But it's mostly removal, and I think that this shows that, like, as you play more and more games, you kind of get an idea of what the meta is and what you need to be running as far as removal suites.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you're very experienced on this deck, because I look at it, I'm like, yeah, those are the removal pieces that I swap out too.
Yeah. I've been brewing this deck since... what year was it? I've been brewing this deck for almost 2.5 years. And the place I started from was not the place where I am today. It was real bad when I first built this deck, but experience, new cards.
When you first built it.
Yeah, when I first built this deck, like, I was kind of new to cEDH, but like I just loved this commander. So obviously I did the fatal mistake of trying to make your casual deck into a cEDH deck, and it was real bad. Lost a lot of games.
Bro, we all do that.
Yeah.
My Yogg deck. You can only go so far, but it looks like you found that you're like, oh no, actually I was wrong. The ceiling for this is way higher than I've been playing it at.
Yeah, I guess it's
we can go all the way.
It's gone a long way since I first built this deck. It was when I first built it, it was far too reliant on having Alaundo already be doing its thing, which I've seen a couple of other lists on EDH top 16, and they are not built even close to what this is built like. The ones that are already up there that aren't mine, they rely very heavily on having Alaundo already be doing the thing Alaundo wants to be doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's about it for the deck tech itself. Are there any shout outs you'd like to give out, or anything else you'd like to say in general about the deck, or anything in general?
Not necessarily. I guess shout out to Game Night, my local game store. I play with a lot of the people there on a weekly basis. If you're in the greater St. Louis area, come by on Wednesdays around 6 o'clock. We're all there every week. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think that's about all I got for shout outs. Okay.
We got one last very important thing called the spicy scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is real hot. It should be in that document I sent you.
Yeah,
if you want to take a look.
Yeah, down towards the bottom.
Carolina Reaper.
Yeah. Carolina Reaper. Oh, slow down. So it goes from Bell Pepper, which is 0 Scoville units, all the way up to Carolina Reaper, which is 2.2 million. We'll just say 2 million. So this isn't really it's not really a linear scale. This is more like logarithmic, where it goes from like 10K to like 1 million, 2 million in a few steps. So anyway, where would you put your deck on a scale from 0 to 2 million?
Somewhere between Jamaican Belle and Habanero Chocolate. It's okay. It's got a lot of cards that you do not see at a cEDH table every day. What do you think, Samurai?
This is muy caliente, man. This is like a Carolina Reaper. Like, when I first looked at this, I was like, oh, Vanilla I'm like, oh, it's an Unctus package. And I thought about it, I was like, Unctus isn't exactly the most normal of decks. Anyways, that's not a meta deck. This is more off meta than that. This is running cards that you don't see anywhere in another cEDH deck. If I was to compare this deck to like a Kinnan deck, I think you share like 30% of the cards. Yeah, and it's all lands.
The staples, the counter spells, the lands, the fast rocks. That's about it.
Your creatures are like so different from every other player's creature suite. Your commander does something completely different from every other commander because it draws and casts for free. Your whole concept of your deck of untapping your stuff to make the infinite mana, while itself not an unusual theory is not normally done with non-auras. Your creatures alone do the untapping. And the fact that your mana dorks aren't even dorks.
Yeah, I honestly have to agree. In my opinion, it's also, we do see some standard kind of control cards in here, like the forces, but which deck wouldn't run those, right? And we have the Seedborn, but like the overall deck composition and the deck's playstyle is just so different from literally everything else in the meta. Like this deck plays at instant speed. What it wants to do is different. It's got one of the coolest like intuition lines I think I've ever seen, and one of the most interesting like Thassa's Oracle lines with their Hermitage that I've seen, because like in 90% of decks that aren't in black, Thassa's Oracle is kind of a meme. I mean, you can combo with like, I think literally Leveler and like maybe like one other weird card, and that's it. But no, on this deck, it's legitimate. Like it's not just there for the deck creator to be like, when I draw my deck, this is how I win, and they're not just too lazy to explain endurance loops or something. I mean,
it's a genuine 1-2 punch.
Not even time twister loops, just straight up endurance loops.
Yeah, like. Anyway, you are in a very, very select few group of people that have gotten the full Carolina Reaper 2 million Scoville units.
I love to hear it.
Certification, very scientific,
ones too.
Very official. And on top of that, you will keep the off-meta guest Discord tag from now until the end of times, or at least until we get hostilely taken over by a certain. No, never mind. Never mind. We're not saying anything about that.
Because by the time that this comes out, there'll be old news, and we don't go into old news.
I mean, it's coming out tomorrow. How can that be old news?
Yeah, because they're not very relevant to begin with.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, we're not going to name anything like that. Anyway, thank you so much to Martian for coming on. Huge thank you for coming on the podcast. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe. Maybe send to a friend. And got anything for us, Samurai? Oh, the cat?
Yeah. Keep brewing, people, because, like, my God, I can not stand this spice. Keep brewing. Keep taking your pet decks to the next level. New cards come out for a reason, to make old cards better.
Cool. We will see you guys later. Peace. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, maybe send this to a friend. And a huge thank you to our patrons, JR and Matt Tang.